Caleb.
Yes.
You know who fucking been pissing in my Count Chocula lately that I don't like?
A person?
People in general. Not a singular person, but just as a whole.
You said who? Like this was a specific individual. I would like to hear more, sir. Who has been pissing in your Count Chocula?
Not one singular person, but people as a general whole.
So what general
pissing in the Count Choculas in a figuratively way.
Go on. I don't know who.
You don't know?
I do know who. It's those goddamn liberals.
No, Caleb. That's going to get us the wrong kind of listeners.
I'm sorry. I'm still hot about a comment I got on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. That was fucking dumb.
It was a feminist got real mad that didn't listen to our Stephen King episode, obviously, but got mad because men can't talk about Stephen King, I guess.
No, men can talk about Stephen King writing women.
Yeah, that
because
was
we're men, so we can't tell whenever he's writing bad women.
We mansplained.
Yes.
Mansplained. I was like, okay. Well, I don't think we did. But, you know, go on. Who's pissing in your...
Well, besides those assholes, is these other group of assholes.
Your sugary breakfast lumps.
Yeah. The kind of people who just like to generally shit on genre fiction, just blanketly as a whole, you know, and not only the would more pertain for the topic of the of us like writing for genre.
I was gonna say you just talk about writing, or both.
Well, I was gonna say both, but I figured more of the topic for today would be of the writing variety of it. But it also fucking irks me when it comes to the reading of said genres too.
Right. We get that in the classic lit group we're in, where some people poo-poo the genre readers, but there are more I would say more people, especially the younger crowd, read more genre than they actually do the classic lit stuff. They appreciate classic lit.
In that group, though, I don't mind that as much because like it's a classical lit group. So that's kind of to be inspected a little bit more.
Yeah, you're kind of the douche if you're bringing up genre all the time in the classic lit group.
But I'm just talking about the kind of people like outside of that, or just in whole, you know, who think it's like beneath them to kind of write for horror or science fiction, magazines or novels and that kind of stuff.
That's the feeling I got when I read that Colson Whitehead Zone 1 or Zone 0. I don't even finish the fucking thing. But it felt like he was just slumming it in the genre world. He wrote his literary zombie story, and it was fucking shit.
Yeah, because it wasn't... Well, I haven't read it, but from what I could just tell from you, from hearing you talk about it, is that, like you said, he kind of takes that literary slant to that kind of genre, which can be good, but if you don't have appreciation for it, it's probably not going to tone out as well.
If you're just trying to class up what you consider a lowbrow genre of story and think, well, I'm just going to write the great zombie story that's going to stand above all because of its literary merit and its themes of bullshit and its purple prose. Yeah, fuck
yeah.
I have encountered, because I kind of toe the line of literary, like, as you know, I've been more into writing genre fiction with a literary flair because I find literary fiction's too boring. Like, I just don't like the topics.
Yeah.
I don't want to write about divorce and fucking real. I want to escape that. That's the thing I don't get is, like, if you're having whatever is going on in your life and it's shit, why would you want to submerge yourself in that in your writing too? Like, you read to escape, a lot of people anyway, read to escape. Why not write to escape?
Yeah.
I would rather write more fantastical stories with those literary elements than write a literary story with some genre elements, you know?
Yeah.
Because the literary stuff it's not going to drag it down, but I just feels like that's what the Zone 1 or whatever did. It was like a literary story with genre elements, and I was like, no. Be like Kurt Vonnegut, tell a genre story with literary elements.
Yeah. I feel like it's good to have both. Because it does help when you have like at least a little bit of literary stuff. It does kind of help bring up the genre, a little bit.
You can have the fun story, but the good writing. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like those who poo-poo the genre stuff and think, oh, I could not possibly, let's use submissions for example. I couldn't submit my work to some paltry horror anthology or some beneath me sci-fi collection because my writing is sublime and it deserves to be in the New Yorker and the fuckface review.
Well, nobody will read it or see it or give a fuck about it.
Yeah, that's another thing. If you write for genre stuff, more people are going to read it.
And
That's just a fact.
Yeah, I mean, and if you like, it's easier to get a fan base that way. Yeah. Because, and two, like a lot of people who are really hardcore, because like there's some people who are just like, they're just like horror people or just sci-fi people or whatever, whatever it may be, or subgenre of any of those, like, who are just like starving for, for stuff, fantasy, all that kind of stuff, are just looking for things. So if you can put anything out like that, it's easier to get an audience who will actually read your work, other than just having, just putting out these things that are probably, could still be very well written and stuff, but are just like bland, going to a thing that, like you said before, like nobody's gonna read, or very few people are gonna read.
Well, here's the thing: using the New Yorker as the pinnacle of literary success with short story formats or poetry or even articles, you can get into the New Yorker. And you probably get paid handsomely to be in that. That's on your resume. People are like, fuck, this guy was in the New Yorker. That's amazing. Yeah. But out of all the people who say that when they read your bio, how many read the New Yorker?
Right, yeah. Or like, it would even like, honestly, like, some, or even depending on where after you got that and you tried to submit to some place else, they'd be like, I don't give a shit that he was published in the New Yorker. What's that, like.
Yeah.
And then too, like you said, well, like that, if you could get something like that, it'd be, pay wise would probably be well. But like again, with a genre where you can get credits, you can get some paying gigs to try to make some money. You know what I mean? It's just, I feel like it's a healthier environment.
Yeah.
As a writer, did you at least of trying to get work out there that people will see.
Well, that's what it ultimately comes down to. Are people reading your work? Because why the fuck are you writing if people aren't reading your work? You know? So that's always my go-to merit of what makes a writer a writer is that people are reading your work. You could be the best writer ever, but nobody reads your work and you're only getting into things that nobody reads. What's the point?
Yeah.
Unless you're getting paid handsomely again.
Right, yeah.
Making millions of dollars. Who gives a fuck if anybody reads it?
Yeah.
Anyway, that goes right into our episode today. Okay. We're going to be discussing lyrical prose. Dun, 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 dun. And like just to focus on what makes purple prose and just basically fancying up your writing, Spencer. So we'll be with all that fun stuff. I don't know, an hour and a half,
45 minutes.
I don't know how long this musical intro is.
3 hours.
Thinking about just putting a fucking loop.
Yeah,
just a big loop of fart noises. Actually.
Ooh.
Yeah. You are listening to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. Podcast. By the Drunken Pen guys. I am your host with the most, Caleb James. With me today, Spencer, the Filipino Philly Fluffer Church. Phillies are horsies.
Yeah.
So I think they're girl horsies though, right?
I don't.
So you're not that kind of fluffing.
Yeah, it's just the tail, like the combing the tail,
you're like,
and the mane and stuff.
Like show horses, you're making them look pretty. Nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
That's a noble profession. Unless you're a PETA person, then horses are supposed to be free. Yeah, good luck having a horse just running down the fucking interstate. Right. That's not the article. This is. We actually have a few articles for you that we are going to be discussing. This one is brought to us by the nownovel.com folks. I'm just going to read some of this, but this will be for your listening pleasure. Boner. Sorry, I got lost in the sauce. Lyrical writing, 5 tips for crafting richer prose. You know what lyrical writing is, Spencer?
I would say like it's more kind of like the James Joyce kind of like
right on the money,
kind of thing. I don't know how else to describe it other than that, A
lot of people just say Irish. The Irish love the lyrical
wordy?
prose.
Like wordy?
It could be, but that's when you get into the purple category. That's our other
funny words.
Funny words are always good. It depends. So lyrical writing is like, deeply evocative, Spencer. It's poetic. It's musical. It's all that fun stuff. Do you want to write like that, though? That is the question.
Probably a little bit.
A little bit. Again, it goes with the purple prose, which we'll be discussing later. But the purple prose is basically when you overdo it.
It's a tool to have in the toolbox to be able to use.
Yeah, and it has its place. If you just throw that kind of writing into every story, it's not going to fit. Especially if you write genre stuff. I'll use an example from one of my recent dark fantasy stories where I think it works, and then I don't have any personal examples of it not working because obviously those didn't get published. So throw those in the garbage, and nobody ever talks about those. The first tip here, my pee-pee.
Just the tip.
The first tip, think about the sound of each sentence. Now, in the last year, I've really focused more not just on my language, but the way it sounds when you read it out loud. And that's what really makes me think of more poetic, lyrical prose. And that's why I find I don't like a lot of modern poetry, because when I read it out loud, maybe I'm just dumb. A lot of the times I don't get the rhythm.
Yeah.
Like I don't get alliteration or
do you think it's even there for a lot of modern stuff?
It could just not be there. Some of the examples here, rhythm is a number. That's a good one. So the pattern formed between words, syllables, and stresses. Which syllables we emphasize in speech? And you can just think of rap songs for that. Hip hop, hibbity hop. Sentence length plays an important role as well. The larger structures of how words and images are grouped add to the overall musical quality of a writer's prose. And then, of course, you have cadence, which is the rising and falling of speech patterns. This is even more so for tonal languages, like, I don't know, Cantonese or Mandarin or something. I find maybe the cadence is where I don't specifically think about it, because I just, again, that goes back in like rapping stuff. A lot of people, when you talk about like cadence, it sounds like one of those things where it's like, I really don't know what that means. But if you go back to like older rap where they focused on that, you could they call it like riding the beat. It's because you have like this way,
like even like kind of like Eminem's kind of that like a little bit. It's not even so. It's like kind of like the way he says it.
Yeah, and the way it just is musically, even if there was no actual background music, it just like has a musicality to it. Two poetic devices relating to the sounds words make as we read them aloud are assonance and alliteration. I want to say assonance, but it just feels like that's not right. Assonance and alliteration. Alliteration I use a lot, and I know Bryce hates it, so I do it more. He doesn't like harsh alliteration, but you know who does? The people who published my work and seem to have enjoyed it.
Now, whenever you do that, is it because I mostly know alliteration for when it's coming like with like kind of like
our bit at the beginning here?
Yeah, like naming things. But like I've never really ever tried to use it long form section, try to have things sounding the same, or, from sentence to sentence, I guess.
mean, the simple version is just that, let's say everything starts with the B, the beautiful, broad, I don't know, walk briskly down the boulevard. Like, there's a good bit of alliteration there. But a lot of the times, it's also just like, I think it's like, internal alliteration maybe. I think it probably says here, but I think it's just could be like the sounds in the words all have the same sound. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same letter.
Almost kind of like a rhyming kind of thing.
Yeah, like a rhyme scheme. So assonance refers to the patterns and repetitions of vowels. For example, if a departing character were to say when asked if they're leaving the next day, away again early at daybreak. So the AY, or even an again is AI, but the way it could be said is away again early at daybreak. The repetition of the long A sound has a slightly plaintive quality. Similarly, alliteration refers to the pattern made by consonants. For example, in the famous war poem Anthem for Doomed Youth by Wilfred Owen, the alliteration of plosive T and P sounds in the description of gunfire mimics the hail of bullets. This is where I really like older poetry, because they use the actual sounds of the words to, like, say you have crashing waves. They can use the sounds in the words to make you think of crashing waves. So this one is gunfire. Only the stuttering rifle's rapid rattle can patter out their hasty horizons. So you get the P's and T's to be like a like a gunfire. So stuttering rifle's rapid ratty. So you get it. Lyrical writing makes use of elements such as these in a way that's expressive, pleasing to our ears. Again, reading out loud. You don't often get this stuff, and I'll use it as an example in my story. You might not get it necessarily if you don't read it out loud. You don't have the same feeling. The second tip, take notes on lyrical prose and poetry. So there's an example here. They're using the poem by Polish poet, I'm going to mess up this name, Czesław Milosz, Czeslaw, last name Milosz. Lots of Z's. Czesław Milosz at dawn. How enduring, how we need durability. The sky before sunrise is soaked with light. Rosy color tints buildings, bridges, and the sign. I was here when she, with whom I walk, wasn't born yet, and the cities on a distant plain stood intact, before they rose in the air with the dust of sepulchral brick, and the building who lived there didn't know. Only this moment at dawn is real to me. The bygone lives are like my own, past life uncertain. I cast a spell on a city asking it to last. What gives the poem its nostalgic and lyrical quality, Spencer? You don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know either. Besides subject matter, a walk with someone at sunrise. Sound quality. Milosz uses alliteration such as the soft sibilant S repeated in the sky before sunrise is soaked with light. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 S's in that sentence. That's one of those ones, like the soft alliteration, I often miss even when I read out loud. The sky before sunrise is soaked with light. Doesn't really hit my ear. I don't know if it hit yours.
Yeah.
Also, probably not reading it that well. Strong and evocative visuals. Milosz uses words like a paintbrush. We see the rosy color that tints buildings. I do like that kind of language. I use that in my writing. Probably overuse it sometimes. Emotional use of time. The various befores and afters of the poem create some of the lyrical quality. For example, the poignant idea of a destroyed city's dust rising in the air. This is where I get dumb. This is where my lack of education and just smarts in general do me harm because I don't take any of that stuff away from poetry.
Right.
Like, I just never see it. I'm always a fucking dollar. I like Edgar Allan Poe because he spells things out for me.
Yeah, and it's like more of a story, kind of.
If it's creepy, I get it.
Yeah.
I don't have to dig deep.
Right.
Like a shallow grave. I don't have to dig very deep in his poetry. But some of these poems, Bryce sent me one. It was supposed to be a satire. I forget the name and who wrote it. But it was about a funeral procession. And I read it, and I got that it was a funeral procession, but I did not get the satire. And like he didn't get it either. That's why I told him to send it to me. Because I was like, well, what do you mean? I read it. I was like, I don't get it either. I don't know why this is funny.
Yeah.
I didn't get it. I'm not that smart. Number 3, use strong visuals. Do you use strong visuals in your writing?
I try to.
It's hard to know unless somebody tells you.
Yeah.
Because if you're using a real strong visual, it's probably too strong. You know what I mean? Like if you're very aware of your visual, you might be overdoing it. You're going to really like this.
Okay.
Many lyrical pieces of music conjure visual images. For example, for example, the French impressionist composer Claude Debussy's piano piece, Bussy Full of Beans. It's not Bussy Full of Beans. For those unaware, me and Spencer had a nice, deep intellectual conversation a week or so ago about Brokeback Mountain and the fact that Jake Gyllenhaal went up in that mountain and he got his back broken, no lube, and a bussy full of beans. Raw dog. No, Spencer. French impressionist composer Claude Debussy's piano piece, Poisons d'Or, Golden Fish, evokes the darting and shimmering of fish in its trills and swift changes in mood and rhythm. So not Bussy Full of Beans, but I would much rather read a poem called Bussy Full of Beans.
Yeah. Especially with a guy with that kind of name.
Debussy.
Like I say, I got more of a vision from his name than from his poetry. or whatever it was.
It's a song. Piano. Many authors create lyrical effects like Debussy by creating subtle or virtue.
Debussy.
That's a Family Guy gag, I believe.
Right.
By creating subtle or overt shifts of tone, phrase, and cadence as sentences build. Consider the lyricism and visual strength of this description of a forest in Anne Michael's Fugitive Pieces. The forest floor is speckled bronze, sugar caramelized in the leaves. The branches look painted onto the onion white sky. One morning, I watch a finger of light move its way deliberately to me across the ground. I really like the sugar caramelized in the leaves. That is very visual to me. Then the onion white sky as well. That's the things I use. The sugar caramelized is what I should be doing.
Yeah.
But I often don't. I don't find that. Because, the speckled bronze and all that. Michael strongly evokes the senses. The lyrical description of the colors in the forest floor give way to the mysterious finger of light. I've used the fingers of light without reading Fingers of Light ever, at least that I remember. I just thought I came up with it. We don't come up with anything.
No.
Unless it's a pussy full of beans. The first guy that came up with that was a genius.
Yes.
Whoever tweeted that was a smart feller or a fart smeller. I don't know. The lyrical effect is amplified by I never say this word. Specificity. No. Specificity. No.
I hope you're not looking at me for help on how to pronounce something.
Specificity. I always add too many I's. Specificity. There it is. Specificity. Each object has a particular color, texture. The forest floor is speckled bronze, and we can almost hear the crunch of leaves underfoot and sugar caramelized. Flow. The long sentences flow in satisfying cadences of assonance, and alliteration. The succession, soft F and SH sounds of the first sentence, for example, evoke a sense of quiet undergrowth. I like it. Number 4. Show what narrators see with emotion. You do this a lot? You seeing things with emotion?
Probably not.
Probably not. I'm not going. It goes back to Debussy. I'm not talking about Debussy anymore.
Debussy.
Lyrical writing may give us good subtext about what a character is feeling in the details they observe. For example, an elated character cresting a hill on a tough 5-day hike might say, "And at last we were there, the summit beneath our feet, and the valleys, aquamarines, deep greens, and chalky grays scaled down into a hushed and sunlit miniature far below." Here the use of time at last and the sense of space and separation and note of triumph, "we were there," together creates a scene that fuck up in the bussy. Together create a scene that suggests the triumphant feeling and the pleasure of a new perspective for the hiker. That's one thing I probably don't ever think about it, but I know I do, is setting up scenes like that with the language of this is supposed to be a triumphant scene. They just crested this mountain. So what kind of language do we say? At last we were there. Number 5, find lyrical sentences, meter or rhythm. Can you do that? Find sentences, meter or rhythm?
No.
When you're aiming for... No, I'm done. Fuck you. When you're aiming for a lyrical writing quality, making a diagram of a sentence's rhythm is a useful way to focus on how each word contributes.
Is that kind of like, because I wanted to ask, but I wanted to wait until we got through the list to see if they covered it. Is that kind of like, because I was thinking of like either like using the same word like kind of repeatedly, or using the same word maybe in each sentence, like kind of like, as like to do with like the rhythm kind of thing.
Hemingway famously wrote like that. I think they said he wrote some of his stories almost like it would be read as jazz. So I think what you said is spot on, like repetitive uses of certain words, or even think of Thomas Wolfe, the blue, all the blue shit. A lot of that can be used for a purpose. So you don't want your writing to be repetitive unless you specifically do.
Like unless if it's for a purpose or trying to highlight a thing or something.
I know Cormac McCarthy's done that in his work where I've spotted the rhythm he was trying to go for, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Well, I mean, you could even kind of, I don't know if I'd call it a rhythm, but like in the road, there was like...
it's almost like beats.
Kind of, yeah.
That kind of writing actually can put you in a little bit of a lull. So you're reading it, and then you're just like, you don't zone out, but you flow with it. It's weird. Like you just start going with it. And then before you know it, the chapter's over and you're like, wait, what did I read?
Yeah.
Like you almost, because you get caught up in the language and it's almost like it soothes you.
Yeah.
Take a line from the Czesław, the Polish guy. His poem above, for example. The sky before sunrise is soaked with light. If you were to draw an asterisk above every unstressed, not emphasized syllable and a / above every stressed, emphasized syllable, you'd have the pattern... The sky before sunrise is soaked with light, and they have */********. You'd have to see the rhythm meter. I don't even know what that means. I'm not a poet guy. Say the pattern of stress, unstress. Okay, nobody cares about that. You know what? You don't care. But here's a way you might care if we use it as a sound instead. So an example would be ta 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 ta. So that's, I guess, how it's supposed to be, It's got 2 triplets of long, short with a short pattern on either side. All that stuff.
Almost kind of like that. Kind of almost reminds me how like some jokes kind of have like a da-da-da-da-da punchline, like like kind of have like a rhythm to them.
Yeah, it's almost to the point where you because a lot of good comedians will use that to subvert the audience, and you think, I know the punchline because you follow these beats to the punchline. Norm Macdonald's great for this, where he just throws some fucking oddball thing at you. Like,
I didn't see that coming.
So famously said. So now we're on to the more important part, now that we know about lyrical prose. I guess I should use my example, huh?
Right.
Before we go on to the purple prose, because I don't want to use it after that. 'Cause I'd be like, this fucking guy's purple as fuck. My story, Undying Islands and Siren's Call 65, I wrote it as a lyrical Celtic fantasy, dark fantasy. It is a story told where the language is just as important as the story, and I use the language as a way, almost like a melodious language, using a lot of alliteration to not just lull the reader into kind of a, is this awful or not? Like, is the story, like, a lot of terrible things are going on, but you're just like, oh, but it's like, it's like musical. So it kind of puts you in a strange state of mind frame. At least that's what I went for. And the people who've read it and liked it have told me as much. So I'll just read the opening paragraph. I had a fucking screenshot, so it's like so small. I couldn't get away to zoom in without having to scroll. Undying Island by Caleb James K. That's me.
That's you.
I wrote this. I got it published. I'm hoping to get it republished in a print too, by the way. Dreamy waves lapped lazily against the small rowboat's bow. Starlight twinkled in the water's ripples, and a couple sat silently as a sea serpent slithered by. Along the boat's bottom boards, pulling at their feet, their daughter's blood cooled and coagulated, but her body went unseen. Only the young girl's parents remained on the rowboat, sitting shoulder to shoulder on the slender slip thwart. They dared not look at each other while the darkness swallowed the island, shrinking behind them. So you get a lot of alliteration, but you get a lot of like almost musicality. But when you read the story, the dialogue's not written like that, obviously, but it flows in with the thing. Because also it starts off in the ocean, so I kind of wanted the whole story to like flow like water. So if you read the story, like we were just saying, like I wanted to be the reader, even if you weren't paying attention, you kind of just could go through the whole story and be like, oh, that was interesting. So I don't know if I completely succeeded in that, but like I said, people seem to like it. So it's all that matters to me. And if you folks want to read that, you can read it for free. Siren's Call, issue 65. That's the spring issue. They have a free PDF you could download. Spencer's in 66, by the way.
Yes.
Not necessarily lyrical, but gross, his story.
Yeah, yes.
Very gross. Lyrical writing versus purple prose. And this one was done by thinking through your fingers.
I kind of like that.
It's better than other things you could do with your fingers. That's an Isaac Asimov quote.
Oh, thinking through your fingers?
Writing to me is simply thinking through my fingers. I'm not going to read all this introduction like I never do. So let's just go right into the article.
Get into it.
Number 1, lyrical prose uses a light touch, Spencer. A light touch.
Light?
Not heavy.
Not from what I've seen.
If you're trying to write lyrically, it's important to realize one thing. Quality over quantity, Spencer.
Yes.
True lyricism is a mix of plainer, more serviceable lines with lines that stand out and sing. So what I always try to do is I try to write lines that are very readable and then throw in the $2 word, or the $10 word, or depending. I try to throw in those kinds of words, that kind of vocabulary sparingly. And also I try to keep the sentence structure and the paragraph structure, again, readable, unless it's, a purpose. One paragraph needs to be like this for a reason. Maybe I want you to be out of breath when you read this one section or something.
And then how we talking about like there was like $10 words. Try to save those for the words, like kind of like for like either like maybe like the action or like of the like the description or just don't try
have
to
a purpose. Don't just throw it in there because I want to sound smart.
That's a fancy way to say go.
If you're ever trying to sound smart, it's not going to work. If each line of your book is filled with metaphors, descriptions, and $10 words, your story will quickly sink under its own weight. Unless you were born in the 1800s, and then you'd be a best-selling, amazing author, apparently. The fucking Victorian era people, they would love that kind of shit, too. All right, let's see.
Probably because they had nothing better to do than it'd take, like, a month to read one story just because of how wordy and long it is.
They give an example from a best-selling young adult author, Sandhya Menyon's. The book is When Dimple Met Rishi. So they give the opening line as an example. His eyes reminded her of old apothecary bottles, deep brown when the sunlight hit them and turned them almost amber. I don't necessarily find that Lyrical. I get it. Like I like the old apothecary, there's your $10 word kind of. And, just deep brown, simple, sunlight hit it. You get the visual. That's one step below what I would consider lyrical prose, but it touches it. Again, that's a young adult, so.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't want to do too hardcore so
Yeah.
the kids could understand it.
But that still almost gives you, like, just that simple line does give you the images of, like, sepia-toned, antique, that kind of stuff, which is what, again, plain.
Yeah.
Plain, but still fancier than just saying the bottles were brown
Yeah.
or the light went through them. Notice how that first line is deeply poetic, Spencer. Verging on the fanciful. It uses description, an unusual metaphor, the striking image of sunlight through brown glass. It's striking. But immediately Menon grounds us back in the real world with short sentences that give us the information without any adornment.
Brown.
So basically just light touch. 2, purple prose takes us out of a story. That's what I find.
Yeah.
I was talking with someone on the internet today about Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, and I did not like that book. I thought it was too verbose. He liked the language. I found it took me out of the story because it was a little too much.
Right.
So the goal of truly great writing is to make the reader forget that they're reading a book, Spencer.
Yeah.
Remember that, David Foster Wallace? He's dead, but, he likes to take the reader out of the book by being a pain in the dick.
So you're not going to be reading Infinite Jest anytime soon?
Wasn't planning on it, no. So if you overdo the vivid writing, you'll end up having the opposite effect that you want. People are going to be like, this sucks. This is too much. I think I forget who we used before as an example, but like, hey, let's describe this leaf for fucking 3 paragraphs.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's not pertinent to the plot. You're just fucking in love with your own writing. Actually goes with the Thomas Wolfe, if that Genius movie had the line about the blue girl. I think her eyes were blue or something. But he had a whole page dedicated to meeting this chick and just going on about the ocean, and her eyes were blue like the ocean, and the blue is blue of all blue. And finally Maxwell Perkins was like, take it all out. Is they're blue? And he's like, they're blue. Hey, that works. It was like after fucking 5 days but his whole book was written like that.
That had to be so frustrating.
Yeah. Number 3, prose turns purple when you set out to impress, obviously. So that's, if you just want to, again, sound smart or have people think you're some kind of big wig.
Smelling your farts.
I'm an intellectual juggernaut. Here's my big words. I've read comments on the internet where people talk like they use the most ridiculous vocabulary. And it's just like, I don't know what you're saying. And I don't consider myself a complete idiot.
Right.
Like, if you're, put it this way, if you are not conveying the message clearly because you're too Jordan Peterson-like, people are not going to like it.
Well, the fun part is, especially like with the comments, is whenever they try to use a big word, but it's not the right word.
Yeah.
But they think it's the right word.
That's always fun. What I always thought would be fun is, like, say you were interviewing one of those Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro types who, like, talk a mile a minute and use this high vocabulary stuff, and they try to get their point across super fast so you don't have time to question it. Just like if I ever interviewed him, I'd be like, I don't understand that. Can you be clearer? Can you make that more simplistic? Because people don't do that because they don't want to think people are, I don't want to be considered dumb, or I don't want people to think I'm stupid. I wouldn't have a problem. I'd be like, hey, can you clear that up a little bit? I don't understand. And then I feel like they would probably not be able to.
Right.
Because they can do it in this eloquent, sophisticated manner with all these big words. But then if you tell them to, like, hey, plain English, I don't know.
And that also kind of falls into, like we've talked about before, with like people with interviews and stuff like that, who kind of just, they have their bits and they're like their script. They kind of go through. So whenever you're like, well, no, tell me again, but don't you know what I mean? They don't have it prepared.
The actual real intellectuals I've seen, whether it's on a debate stage or just doing a lecture or something, usually they stick to plain language and they have a very strong grasp of what they're talking about. It's not from a script. Yeah. Because they understand the subject matter versus these people who understand the subject matter as far as how it can relate to their way of impressing others. So it's like, okay, I could talk about quantum mechanics. I don't actually understand quantum mechanics, but I know if I say these sentences, people are going to think I understand quantum mechanics.
Say quantum a lot.
Yeah. Number 4, prose can also become too purple if our authorial voice dominates our character voice. This is an important one when the audience is very aware that this is the author speaking and not the character when it's supposed to be the character, that'll throw you off. A good example of that is if you have a story about hillbillies, well, let's say trailer park people, and through the story when they're talking to each other, they're very hick-like and they have bad grammar, bad, whatever, how you ever do it. Like, let's do Cormac McCarthy's Outer Dark. They're fucking mountain Appalachian people. They're not smart, and their language and the way they interact, establishes that pretty quickly. But in that, there was a separation with the language when he's describing things. But if he just had it so it was supposed to be the character describing their surroundings, and they're using all these fucking eloquent words.
Yeah.
And, they're talking about, like, things they wouldn't notice,
Right.
Like, if you have
or maybe they would notice, but you're trying to
they wouldn't be able to explain it that way.
Or, yeah, they would use simpler words to explain it other than, like, the fancy words to explain it.
Yeah, like H.P. Lovecraft I thought was bad for that, where he would have these fucking complete moron characters that had the awful accent you can't even understand. And then all of a sudden there's like this fucking weird sophistication that comes through when like talking about their dress or something. And it's like, no, you don't, they're not thinking like that.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be the character thinking like this. They're not thinking that way. They're like, what, they're a secret genius that just can't verbalize what they're thinking?
Yeah, especially like in those stories, because those stories are always written by, like, it's a character writing what happened. So, yeah. It's not even like it's a third person narrating something or telling you, and then your character doing it in a different way.
Yeah, I know we always bring them up like because we're fucking stupid assholes, but Stephen King does a good job of not doing that with his characters. He doesn't. There's a distinction between his voice and the character's voice.
Yeah,
and that often doesn't.
Or the narrator's voice.
With the narrator's voice, and that often doesn't bleed over, even if it's accidentally. I've had that happen a few times in my work where, like, I'll catch it, I'll read something, reread it, and be like, wait a minute, this doesn't fit with the story. Like, this is me.
Yeah.
This is me talking, not the character. For funsies, we'll end on Reddit.
Okay.
What's your favorite example of purple prose or awkward phrasing? So this is from The Virgin Suicides. It's a very popular movie in the 90s, I believe.
Yeah.
It came from, adapted from a book of the same name. He felt himself grasped by his long lapels, pulled forward and pushed back as a creature with 100 mouths started sucking the marrow from his bones. Her feet, wet from the fawn, gave off a pasture smell. He felt her clammy shins, her hot kisses, her bristly thighs, and then with terror he put his finger in the ravenous mouths of the animal leashed below her waist. Ew. Ravenous mouth below her waist. I thought it was like an actual animal. 2 beasts lived in the car, one above snuffling and biting him, and the one below struggling to get out of its damp cage. I thought at first that wasn't bad, but that got gross.
Yeah.
Ravenous mouth of an animal between her legs. What an awful metaphor. That's terrible. Let's see what else we got. A lot of literature from the 19th century is almost unreadable due to the excess of purple prose. So this is from Ivan Turgenev. Sketches from a Hunter's Album is a 100,000-word book about the radiance of trees. From early morning, there had been occasional drizzle, succeeded time to time by periods of sunny radiance. A season of changeable weather, the sky was either covered with crumbling white clouds or suddenly clear for an instant in a few places, and then, from behind the parted clouds, blue sky would appear. Okay, that's not purple prose, that's just boring. It's not purple, that's just like him talking about clouds and blue. I mean, again, purple is overwritten. This is just, I don't even know if there's a term for it, but when you just stray from the subject matter, and I'm assuming his whole novel's not just about the sky and the blue cloud or the white clouds and the blue sky. I would think that doesn't necessarily constitute purple. Somebody said Melville. Well, somebody said Melville. I'm not seeing any more examples.
Read it very light on purple prose, or just good purple prose.
Oh,
I
it's
guess.
just people bitching.
Just more complaints about purple prose than actual examples of purple prose.
Yeah. I don't know what this one's from, but I put on a short, ripped black Gothic dress that said anarchy on the front in blood red letters and was all ripped in a spiky belt. Under that, I put on ripped black fishnets and boots that said Joel all over them with blood red letters. That's just bad.
Yeah.
That's just too much blood red letters.
It's just wordy.
Yeah.
Repetitive.
I don't think there's any more on here that are interesting. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That pisses me off. I was hoping to get like a really, like a famous example. Here we go. Famous examples of author going overboard with purple prose. I think we actually did this on here before. Not this, but the purple prose reading.
Oh, probably.
Probably. The sun had set, but had left his rosy, lingering beams to flush the sky and tint the darkening landscape with hues of liquid gold and purple. Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre. I think some of these are just people don't like reading things that aren't just basic.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't say that's purple either.
It didn't seem long enough to be purple.
No. The night was dark and still, and the stars twinkled in the heavens like a million diamonds strewn across a purple velvet sky. J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter and the Source. Again, that's not purple.
Yeah.
I don't know what this person wants from their... Do you just want, the night was dark and still, the stars twinkled? Is that what they want? There are stars in the dark sky.
Right,
Is that what they want? I don't know. The trees swayed in the breeze, their leaves rustling like the whispers of 1,000 secrets, and the sky blazed with a million stars like a blanket of diamonds on a velvet purple night. Stephanie Meyer, Twilight, also ripped off Harry Potter, clearly. The sky was a deep velvety purple with a hint of orange on the horizon, and the stars twinkled like a million diamonds in the night sky. J.R.R. Tolkien, The Hobbit. Tolkien did it first. So I think it's just the actual twinkling of the stars and the diamonds and the...
I would say, because I don't think like anything in Twilight could be
purple.
Yeah, written up enough to be purple, you know.
I think that gripe should have been directed more towards reusing imagery.
Yeah.
Which sometimes you just don't, if you haven't come across it, you don't know you're doing it.
And then also too, like you see, like there's a good fucking image. You read something, you're like, oh, that's a good thing. I might kind of steal that a little bit for my thing, like
Well, don't do it now.
Especially if it's an older thing.
Oh yeah. So this person, I think has a good one. Where is it?
Because that's like that saying that like writing is just stealing off of everybody else that you've ever read, pretty much, you know.
Yeah, we'll end this from the French Revolution.
Ooh, did they give up? They gave up.
No, there's a book. It's a very long book by Carlyle. Somebody named Carlyle.
Carl.
Scottish, right? Not Carl. Carlyle. Oh. Unhappily, our National Assembly has much to do. France to... I don't want to read that. We're done. Purple. Don't be purple or be purple. Who cares? Just write how you want to write. Fuck it.
Maybe a little purples. Like, a little purple probably doesn't hurt.
Well, I think when we did this last time, the dark and stormy night was considered the purple. You know, don't do this. I like dark and stormy night.
Well, I think that was more like cliche, kind of. Like, don't.
Yeah, but that was the first.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely did an episode on purple prose, but this was lyrical prose, and then we just went into the purple stuff. But anyway, folks, if you like this episode, I don't know what to tell you because we're not going to do it again.
Probably not for a while.
Yeah, you can follow us at DPW Podcast on X, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Spencer's OnlyFans this week is the Philadelphia Filibuster. No.
Philly Fluffer.
The Filipino Philly Fluffer. He's brushing Phillies. Their hair, their ponies.
The tails and the manes.
Okay, whatever you say. We have a strip club. We have a strip club like an hour from here called the Philly Corral. Neither here nor there. It's BYOB, by the way.
Oh, really?
Bring your own beer, not bring your own bitches. That was harsh.
It'd probably be better. You probably want to do that second one.
Yeah. If you're a feminist who listened to this podcast, we already probably apologized once, long time ago for.
Well, I mean, it's
men.
again with the Stephen King comment, like,
yeah,
we're just bad.
We're just bad. We're men. We're born this way, and we shall stay this way unless we don't. I don't know.
Until we die.
Until we die, which could be any day now. You can follow my something or other at calebjameskay.com where I publish things of some nature. And that's it. I don't know. My throat's parched and dry today. So we thank you for listening, and we'll check you out probably next week. I think, I guess next week, maybe.
Yeah.
They're going to listen to this episode and cancel. But if they don't, we'll have a guest, which I should probably announce. So probably would help, huh?
Maybe.
If things go according to plan, next week we will have Kate Brandis on.
Ooh.
I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. I'll have to ask her when she comes on.
Just to make sure.
Yeah, because I am, as you know, Spencer.
A dollard.
A buffoon. A moron.
Yeah. I can't think of anything else because I'm dumb.
I'm too dumb to think of a good one. So anyway, we thank you for listening. Check you out next week.